We arrived in the UK in 1990, so I was 8 years old. I came with my mum and my brother and my sister. My dad was already living in the UK. We left Lebanon fleeing war. And we arrived here with no knowledge of the country, no knowledge of the language, and it was very, very difficult for us when we first arrived here. I started primary school as soon as we arrived. I couldn't speak any English whatsoever, and it was from that point that I had to learn and try to fit into the system and the lifestyle that was around us. The most difficult thing for me initially was the language. Obviously, I didn't understand English, I didn't know English, and that was probably the most difficult thing for me. One of the other things that I found really difficult in 1990 in Brighton, so you're talking over 30 years ago, there were no people who I could, who looked like me, who I could associate with, who I could, like somebody to fit in with. There wasn't anybody like that at that time. So that was really, really difficult for me. Once I did become more comfortable with the language, once I understood the language a little bit better, throughout primary school I became a little bit more confident, just a little. I made some more friends and got through primary school relatively easy, I would say. But I think the point of secondary school, when the other children around me were a little bit, you know, you're more prone to bullying in secondary school. That was a bit more challenging. Sorry, in the secondary school that I was at, it was maybe about 800 or 900 students, and I was one of 5 non-white students at the time. So it was very, very difficult to, you know, to feel like you fit in. I looked different, I spoke different, I behaved different, and that was probably one of the most difficult things at that period in time. My name is Fatin, so one of the first things that I struggled with when I came to the school is them shortening the name to Fat and making fun of me because of my name. That was one of the first instances that I sort of encountered when I first came to the country. My father actually changed my name within the school to Tina, so it was more, it was easier to fit in, and it seemed to give me less problems with, you know, with regards to bullying around the fat part of my name. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I was an outsider. I wanted to be like the other people around me. I wanted to look like the other girls around me. Being from the Middle East, obviously I've got a different skin complexion, I've got different, you know, my hair is different, everything was different about me, and all I wanted to do was fit in and be like one of the other girls. And I almost felt ashamed of my background because it was so different. And you know, I would be embarrassed to bring people back to the house because my mum couldn't speak English properly, and I felt ashamed of my background at that point. I think for a very long time I was searching for an identity. I was searching for somewhere to belong, for people that were like myself, for me to feel like a part of a unit. My father had left shortly after we arrived, so within 2 years of us being in the UK, my father and my elder brother left and went to Australia. So towards maybe the age of 16 or 17, there was a crowd, and not so good crowd around that I was hanging around with, and one of them became my husband. So I met him at the age of 17, and he was popular and known, but not for the right reasons. So I think for me, I wanted a protector. I wanted not necessarily a father figure, but a strong male presence in my life. And I think that drew me to him. But over time, I discovered that that wasn't the best thing for me. My husband was Jamaican, which was difficult for my family to accept. We got together when I was around 17, we married, I became pregnant at 18, and throughout that time, shortly after I became pregnant, the controlling and the jealousy and the violence started. And as the time progressed, the violence and the problems got worse. The times that stand out to me in my mind in terms of the violence, in terms of the issues that I faced with him, police having to be called either by myself or by my neighbours because, you know, obviously they could hear the violence, they could hear the, you know, the screaming, the crying that was coming from myself at the time. The violence being so severe that I would need to be hospitalised and the ambulance would have to be called. Also were issues, and at this time I have a baby of 1 or 2 years old around. There was a time that I was standing outside in the middle of the day outside our flat, and I had my baby with me in the pushchair, and he punched me and he broke my nose in broad daylight outside in front of my baby, and I had to take myself to the hospital with a baby in the pushchair to be seen to and to be treated. So there was a lot of reports to the police and to the hospitals with regards to the violence. The last incident that took place resulted in me being taken to hospital with severe internal bruising, and on that occasion one of the nurses, one of the staff within the hospital said to me that if your son continues to see this violence, we will take him away from you. So although I was far away from my family, although I didn't have the relationship with my family to be able to call on them for help, the choice that I had to make between my son and his father was probably the thing that I needed to get the wake-up call at that time. That same day, the police took me back to the house. I was able to pack my bags and pack my son's bags, and I was taken to a women's refuge in London the exact same day, and that was the day that I escaped. When I had my son, I think, as any woman that has a child will tell you, the first time you see your child, it's the purest type of love that you're ever going to experience, and that's when I felt true love. But I was still very young. I was still very naive. I haven't had many life experiences up to that point. I knew I loved him. I knew I had to protect him. I knew I had to provide a good life for him. But I was stuck. I was stuck in that relationship at that time. I think the turning point for me of having to choose between my son and his dad was the wake-up call that I needed to make the right choices and make the right decisions for my life. Once I escaped that marriage, I escaped that relationship, it almost feels like I was thinking clearer, because in domestic violence, when you're in an abusive relationship, I don't think I was functioning as I should have been. I wasn't thinking as I should have been. I wasn't behaving the way that I should have been. So once I escaped from that relationship and I moved away from it, I could start to focus on myself, focus on my son. I could see a future for myself and my son. That's all we had. We had each other. I think it's made our relationship extremely close, and it's given us, you know, the love and protection and security that we need in life. My son is part Lebanese, part Jamaican, so there are a lot of situations that we have encountered within that time, be it from my side of the family or my side of the heritage, of the racial issues that come with it, or society as a whole, of having a young black or mixed race son within this sort of system in these times. Once I came to London, I started studying, so I went back to college and I regained my GCSEs and my A-levels to a standard that would allow me to go to university. I wanted to be a role model for my son. He has lost contact with his father and has not seen him since 2003. So I wanted to be a role model of a good citizen, of a hard-working person, of somebody motivated, educated, doing the right things. I wanted to provide that type of role model for my son. I went to university in 2008 and I graduated in 2012 with a BA in education. My experiences of growing up in the UK, growing up in an environment where I was the minority, I wanted to help other children and other young people within that that were similar to myself, that experienced the things that I experienced at that time. So I wanted to be a teacher. That was the aim of it. Once I graduated, I went into early years education and I started working with children aged from 3 months to 5 years. And very quickly I progressed from a practitioner to within 2 years I was managing a nursery. By 2015 I was a nursery manager. As a Muslim woman, I've encountered a lot of issues just purely for the scarf that I wear on my head. Many a times I have come across people that are surprised that I speak the way that I speak, that I can, I speak English fluently, I speak English to a good standard, and it surprises people. They're expecting something very different when they see me and they hear my voice. They don't feel that the two connect. Now, I'm currently studying a master's, so I'm studying for a master's in early years education and leadership. I want to push myself outside of my comfort zone. I think that's me as a person. I like to push myself outside of my comfort zone, whether it's academically, whether it's physically, whether it's with anything. I like to see how far I can push myself.
That's it, quick.
I joined a bike ride, the London to Brighton bike ride, which was, I think, about 55-60 miles bike ride with a group called Who Was Hussein that were raising money for the homeless community in London, and altogether there was maybe over 100 people involved of the group that I was doing the bike ride with, and we raised well in excess of £100,000. I have also done charity fundraisers for Crisis, for the homeless people in London, and volunteered there over the Christmas period. I've also just completed a 100-mile run within February for Women's Refuge. So I think that's probably the thing closest to my heart, because I did live within the refuge for 2 years. I did receive a lot of support from them, so I completed a 100-mile run in February and I raised some money for them. If it hadn't been for Refuge, for the Women's Refuge that I stayed in, I may not be here now. I may not be the person that I am now, because they genuinely supported me at a time where I had no support, and I was very fragile and I needed the guidance and the support that they provided for myself and for my young child at that time. If I could advise my younger self, I would say to her, don't look for validation outside. Don't look for acceptance outside yourself. Learn to love yourself. Learn to accept yourself, be proud of who you are, be proud of your heritage, of your background, of everything that makes you you. Love yourself.